For 14 weeks and 5 days, between November 15, 1884 and February 26, 1885, European countries prepared and cooked their plans on how to share Africa like a piece of cake. They called it the Berlin Conference. It was at this conference in Berlin, present-day Germany, that African lands were divided on a map, while the Africans themselves were exempted from the meeting. It was not an omission of invitation or a simple oversight. Rather, it was a large-scale legalized daylight robbery. Africans were considered irrelevant and incapable of making meaningful decisions on what happened to or on their lands. Since they were uncivilized, according to these European invaders, they needed help, and the participants of the Berlin Conference were to be their saviors. Towns, lands, and rivers were all portrayed on the map that hung on the wall. With just a ruler and pencil, borders were formed, territories were claimed, and trade routes were created or removed, while historical background, cultural laws, sovereignty, and traditional institutions of a people dating back thousands of years were completely ignored. And just like a piece of cake, Africa, the second largest continent in the world, was shared at a conference table. The Berlin Conference was organized by Otto von Bismarck, the first chancellor of the new German Empire, who was concerned with securing portions of the continent within which exploration had begun. The conference birthed the General Act of the Berlin Conference, which had been nicknamed the Scramble for Africa. The conference consisted of top European nations who were invested in exploring the resources that abound within the continent. This was justified under the guise of civilizing or developing the countries, which they considered barbarian and primitive. This paved the way for the colonization of the African states by the Western countries and eventually robbed the continent of its rich cultural heritage and linguistic diversity. By the time most of these countries would gain independence from their colonial masters during the 20th century, great damage had already been done. The structures and systems that had been laid down by